in this book, you're arguing that there's a global system of control led by the US that is basically set up to ensure that the rest of the world is working in the interests of American corporate power. But let's take a step back from that, the title, the racket. So that comes from American General Smedley Butler,
That's right.
who wrote the book War Racket.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the title.
Yeah, so he's a very interesting figure because he was extremely senior in the US military. He died the most decorated Marine in US history. And he signed up to the Marines when he was 16 in 1898, when the Spanish-American War happened. And this is an important war because this is the moment many historians say the US started becoming an overseas empire, because they won that war against the Spanish and then took Spanish colonial possessions like Guam, Puerto Rico, and Cuba unofficially from the Spanish, and they became part of the US. So he signed up then, fought in that war, fought in many, many interventions in Central America during that period, because although it's not seen as a period when America was a rampant empire, it was. There was, I think, 6 interventions in Honduras alone from 1903 to 1925. They invaded Haiti in 1915, looted all the gold. There was interventions in China. There were a lot going on in terms of the US military. He was a senior figure in all that. But later in life, he had an awakening and understood that everything he'd been told, why he'd signed up, why he'd gone to those places to fight, which was, they still say it's to protect the American people, to protect national interest. He realized that wasn't true. He realized actually he was there to protect the interests. This is from that speech that he gave that then became a book. He says, I wasn't there to protect the American people, I was there to protect the profits of Brown Brothers Bank in New York, to protect the United Fruit Company's investments in Central America. And I remember reading that speech.
So economic interest, basically.
Exactly. And that we don't think of that like that. The US military and the CIA and MI6 and MI5 are always presented as about protecting us and protecting the British people, the American people, but they're not. They're an arm of a state which has been captured by corporate power and works for corporate power. Just to give you a very overt example, in the coup in Guatemala in 1954, when the president was the Social Democratic president Jacobo Arbenz was overthrown, that was because they'd taken land away from the United Fruit Company, and the CIA, literally working for the United Fruit Company, took out the Democratic president, instituted a dictatorship. All their interests were protected, and then there was actually a genocide later on in Guatemala that came out of that. But anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. So he had this realization after he'd left, and became a big advocate for peace and for telling the truth about what these agencies are about. Because the other thing he was involved in, or they tried to get him involved in, was he says there was a business plot against Franklin Roosevelt and his New Deal by business groups who didn't. It wasn't particularly radical, Franklin Roosevelt. It was a social democratic policies, but the business lobby were extremely upset. And he said he was approached to launch a coup within the United States. But anyway, in this speech that he gave later in life, he says, as I say, that he wasn't there for the national security interest. And he says, I was a high-class muscle man for big business. That's what he said. He said, Al Capone could operate in 3 districts. I operated in three continents. And it spoke to me a lot.
So he called himself a gangster.
Yeah, he said I was a gangster for capitalism as well. So, and my experience at the FT really confirmed that to me. Is the truth is embedded so deeply under layers and layers of ideology, which justifies the system and presents what he was talking about as national security, as American people's safety. But underneath all that, the agencies are protecting a small elite within the United States and creating a world which allows them to invest, to penetrate markets wherever they want to go. And that is kind of why it's not widely understood, the US system, because the US system is different to previous empires, where you'd have a formal garrison of troops.
This one's informal.
Yes, it's informal, and what is often called open door empire, i.e. if you open yourself up to investment, to our products, and basically trade on our terms, everything on our terms, and economic penetration, you're fine. If you aren't, and you start doing things that we don't like, or you put up tariffs and try and protect your own industries, or use the resources of your country for your own people rather than transnational corporations, we'll take you out. Effectively, that's how it works. They wouldn't say that, obviously, and there's many ways they can do that. One is subversion by intelligence agencies, which is a favorite. You know, like the CIA will go in and do an information campaign. They'll start planting articles in newspapers. They'll start presenting people as, well, they can do whatever they want. I mean, an example of that is Mossadegh in Iran in 1953. There was a whole campaign. But if that does, and that worked in Iran, democracy was overthrown. They installed a dictator because he nationalized the oil company. But sometimes it doesn't work. And then what they bring in after that, if that doesn't work, is the US military. It is a last resort, but that is, if things are getting out of control, we'll take you out by force. So Smedley Butler, I think, understood it very, very well. And in fact, interestingly, I spoke to John Kiriakou the other day, who spent time in prison. He used to be in the CIA from 1990 to 2004. And he blew the whistle on the torture program. Very important act. And he went to prison. He was sent to prison for 2.5 years. And I asked him about Smedley Butler when I talked to him the other day, and he said, yeah, he was on the money. That's how it works. It's that these agencies are set up to enforce corporate control and also geopolitical control, but those two things are linked. You don't often get countries that are geopolitically independent of the United States, but allow the United States to run riot in their economy. Those two things are linked. And as I say, it's the most powerful empire in human history in terms of its military prowess and in terms of its presence. It has a military presence in 132 of the 190 UN member states. But yet it's an invisible empire because you barely would know it existed if you read the mainstream media, which most people do, and the mass media. And Smedley Butler should be much more widely known about, because it's not often you get someone that senior who sees the light and understands the truth and actually reveals what's going on. But these characters are often buried by history.